So this one I think is it's gonna be my warm-up video for my main event today. So in a few minutes, I'm gonna do a live about Venus retrograde that is happening tomorrow, the 22nd. I think today's the 21st. Happening soon. But this video is a bit of a soapbox. So, my title, as you've seen, never apologize for being male. This goes for, your skin color too, whatever it is. Especially these days, never apologize for being white either. That'll be another video. But yeah, it's interesting. So these days, your classic Christian guilt has been redirected in all these directions. So what do I mean by that? Well, there's so many people out there who are, they think that they're at the end. This is especially in America. People think that they're at the end of history. They think that they're at the absolute apex. They're at the pinnacle of human evolution because they're just so fucking clever. They're so fucking smart. They belong to the right clubs. They went to 4 years of drug and alcohol camp, which we call college and university. They listen to and read the right news outlets. They're full of themselves. This is a human problem, right? So this redirected Christian guilt. So for so many years, when Christianity dominated the Western world, they taught people, and they learned it from Judaism, and Islam learned it from Judaism too. But in the Western world, the Christian church taught people to just feel guilty about everything, and that's it's one of the bases of the whole worldview, is that you're an evil human, even though you're exactly as the perfect, all-powerful creator made you to be. And you need to feel guilty about that. Because, that's what keeps people coming back. So when people are raised in an environment where they feel guilty all the time, they have no self-esteem, because it gets people walking on eggshells perpetually. So people are forever walking on eggshells. They're afraid they're going to make a mistake. They're afraid if they look at someone wrong, the person's going to get offended and have a meltdown, or they're afraid that God in heaven is going to be angry with you. The God of love. We're taught that, in these settings, we're taught that we should be afraid of the God of love. It's very contradictory and hypocritical. So, we're talking in the Middle Ages, the early Middle Ages, after the fall of the Roman Empire. So the 400s, the 5th century through, modern times. And then when the whole Protestant thing got going, they had learned guilt from the original Christian church. It wasn't called the Catholic Church, it was the Christian church. Protestants split off, and then you had the Catholic Church. So, it's like all the Christian churches do this, and they reinforce their own power by convincing people they need to feel guilty for, pretty much everything. Can't do anything right. And this is what narcissists do to people. Narcissists want to keep people emotionally, mentally off balance, because they never know what to expect. When you're off balance and you're afraid you're always going to make a mistake, you're just always off balance, and you're constantly afraid that you're going to do something wrong. And this is a form of abuse, by the way. So organized religion is founded on abuse. If they weren't being abusive, nobody would, only the most abused people would still be part of it. Actually, that doesn't make any sense. um, excuse me, strike that from the record. That doesn't make any sense. If they weren't using abuse, they wouldn't have any subscribers. Nobody would be part of it. You know, abused people. You know, the most abused people would just find other ways to get abused, or they would be the only ones who, you know, were part of it. I guess that did make sense. I just got out of work. I'm a little spacey. So anyway, yeah, only the most abused people won't have anything to do with it. So, you know, for centuries it was like, oh, and this whole thing about keeping the human population down, that's pure fucking Christianity because in the Middle Ages they were trying to do this. So, yeah, it's like if you have a sexual impulse, oh, it's evil and unclean. You know, women were raised to think that their menstrual cycles were curses and embarrassments and, you know, uncleanliness. So we have all that. Now, in a modern world, you have so many people who they think they're too smart for church because they're into science and they're into social justice and, you know, secularism and all this shit. They're atheists and they're just way too smart. But we still have these movements that tell us that we need to feel guilty about being human. And so, you know, we're getting into like environmentalism here. You should feel guilty about existing, about having to eat, about having to clothe yourself, about having to buy things. Um, it's the old church guilt redirected into something more left wing, more scientific, more secular, less. I was gonna say less religious, but that's just not true. Because, excuse me, because science, politics, it's all religion. It's just not, you know, it's not conventional religion. So it looks like it's an actual alternative. So another form that this takes is, you know, since the 60s, the left wing has had this whole thing where, you know, well, if it wasn't for those horrible, oppressive males, the world would be fucking amazing, unbelievable. That's a form of abuse. And, you know, I see this today, you know, with males who are, you know, American males who are in their late 60s, early 70s, maybe up to 75. They're in that sweet spot for like the feminist propaganda. And these guys will they'll start these conversations like to break the ice. They'll be like, out of nowhere, without a context, they'll be like, oh, aren't us males so fucked up? Aren't women so much better than us? And I'm just looking at, you know, and they think I'm gonna like agree with them, I guess. Maybe I have pledge or like freshman tattooed across my forehead, and I'm just supposed to agree with whatever they say. It's possible. I can't see it, but yeah. So I hear this and I stand there and I think to myself, well, what the fuck? And I'll say to him, no, women are fucked up too, just in different ways. Men tend to be aggressive, women are more passive aggressive. So where men can be physically aggressive, women are more psychologically abusive. So, I mean, you know, women can get physically violent too, but that's the prevailing trend. So, yeah, no gender is better than another. But, you know, so that whole propaganda, the whole anti-male propaganda rolled out, you know, late 60s, early 70s. Gloria Steinem was big into this, who was admittedly a CIA officer before. She was like, well, before I led the women's movement, I was a CIA officer, and then I quit. And then she started admitting, no, well, I was still working for them. Um, so, yeah. So now you get to the 2020s here, and you've had, you know, 50, 55, 60 years of this propaganda, and it's taken a toll. And there are so many young men who just they don't have any masculinity because they've been told that it's wrong. And then you have this segment of women who they're always complaining that they're no good, that there are no men to date. But anytime a male shows masculine behavior that's being appropriate, non-toxic, they can't stand it. And this has to do with control issues. That's one of the key characteristics of the American culture and the culture of the American empire, just being a fucking control freak. It's like, the last 3 years, the whole world got fucking shut down for a flu virus. You know what I mean? Like, talk about control freaks. And then what? 50 or so percent of the population volunteered to be medical experiments. You know, you had this needlecraft, and people were told, well, this hasn't gone through proper testing and trials. It's emergency use only, and you're actually enrolling into an open trial. Well, people are like, oh, well, I just can't tolerate a risk, so shoot me up. So yeah, we have this very risk averse culture, and I think so. Society has become more feminized. An interesting thing with the needlecraft, you know, poisoning. Well, poisoning has always been an art back into the ancient world. People who could create poisons or undetectable poisons. Poisoning was a woman's art. Men learned how to fight with swords and firearms and hand to hand. Well, women learned how to poison. So you get this mass global poisoning event, highly feminine in its energy. And slowly, since 60s, 70s, the the mommy lobby has exerted more control over American society and over Western society. And you see this in a culture where there's less fun, there's less adventure, because you worry your mother deeply, you know what I mean? So it's like things have gotten extremely feminized, and males and females, men and women, they're both control freaks in their own ways. But it's interesting, like in day-to-day environments, for the most part, it's like males tend to be a little more happy-go-lucky. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like something smells funny in the air, but it's not, it's not like the smell of decay or, something totally toxic. Guys are like, yeah, whatever. And a woman will be like, what's that smell? I have to know what that smell is, and that's why, like, our environments are full of all these fucking toxic fragrances and these air fresheners that are industrial chemicals. It's like, that's just part of who we are. Women have a certain affinity with the material environment, and it's like things have to be a certain way. I'm not saying that that's wrong or anything. But it has to be counterbalanced. It has to be counterbalanced by that male energy, which says, you know what? It's not hurting you. Nobody's dying. Just fucking suck it up. Just deal with it. So we've lost that counterbalance. And there were times in history when, things were too male and people were just forcing their way through life and banging their heads, through walls, just trying to get through life. And I'm not saying that, males have never been oppressive towards females. That would be completely inaccurate. But at this point, the tables have turned. And, when male-female energy, when it doesn't counterbalance one another, the other will get way too expansive and out of whack. So yeah, so we have this culture where, it's somehow shameful to be a male. And, the media tells us, like, anybody who's from a group that's deemed as evil or undesirable is responsible for everything that group did in history. So, if you tell one of these just unhinged feminists, it's like, well, I wasn't I wasn't an adult male in the 1950s or, whatever time period. They're like, well, that doesn't mean you're not responsible because you're one of them. It's like, that is so fucked up and abusive, it's not even funny. Just that whole way of thinking. So yeah, that's the whole point of this video is don't give in to these people. Don't fucking apologize for being a male. I don't know how many young guys are gonna see this. I hope some do. I'm not exactly burning up YouTube with thousands of views here. But yeah, when you encounter unhinged feminists like that, you're dealing with a control freak. You're dealing with someone who's neurotic. And a neurotic person is somebody who has intense negative feelings that they don't have the skills to cope with. So what they have to do is they have to go control the world they have to attempt to control the world to try to, get things the way they want them and feel comfortable again. It's like, good fucking luck. I'm not cooperating. It's a funny thing too. It's like, I'm very in touch with my feminine energy. I get along great with women, especially reasonable women. But it's funny, in the past, I've had friends who are, married friends, and just for me, sort of like speaking my mind, not really saying anything offensive, but just not like kowtowing to very controlling women. It's like they give me this like stink eye, and it's like, and they'll tell their husbands, I don't want you hanging around with him. And it's like, but my influence, I set an example. Like, don't deal with a fucking control freak, even if that person is from some, protected class victim group, whether they're female, black. I don't give a shit. I don't cooperate. I don't negotiate with fucking terrorists. A terrorist is somebody who they terrorize people. They use people's emotions against them to get what they want. So I don't negotiate with fucking terrorists. So I don't care how oppressed the groups that you identify with have been in the past. I just don't give a shit. I'm not playing that game. All I owe you the present moment. I owe you basic respect and dignity and fairness in the present moment. I don't owe you fucking apologies. I don't owe women an apology on behalf of all males. I don't owe all blacks an apology on behalf of all whites. That's just abusive, codependent bullshit. And my value of myself is not dependent on your approval of me. So yeah, never apologize for who you were born as. So yeah, enjoy your weekend. And I'll be doing my Venus retrograde here in a minute, my Venus retrograde video. Thank you for tuning in.